The power of pleasure in masturbation after 60. Let me ask you something, and I want you to be brutally honest with yourself. When was the last time you touched yourself? Not out of routine, not to check if your body still works, not to rush towards some quick release, but to truly feel? When was the last time you slowed down and allowed yourself to sink into your own pleasure, to linger there, to explore the contours of your body with patience, to savor every ripple of sensation, without guilt, without shame, without the voice in your head whispering, "You're too old for this. This isn't for you anymore." If that question stirs something in you, curiosity, sadness, maybe even a flush of embarrassment, you're not alone. Because after 60, so many people quietly carry the same unspoken questions. Am I still allowed to want this? Am I still allowed to crave intimacy, to touch myself, to feel pleasure? Is something wrong with me if I still have desire? Or worse, does it mean something's broken in me if I don't? And here's the secret that almost no one dares to say out loud. These questions are not a reflection of your body, or your worth, or your capacity for love. They are the reflection of a culture that has tried to erase your sexuality. So today, we're going to talk about that. Not just about sex, not just about masturbation as a mechanical act, but about the power of pleasure, about healing, about rebellion, about claiming what has always been yours, the right to feel alive in your own skin, even, and especially, after 60. Part 1. Naming the silent struggle. See, the problem isn't your body. It isn't your age. It isn't that you've suddenly lost the capacity for intimacy. The problem is the story you've been told. For decades, we've been fed the same tired narrative, that sexuality belongs to the young. That desire is only valid when it's linked to fertility, performance, or attractiveness as defined by glossy magazines and Hollywood screens. That once you cross a certain threshold, menopause, gray hair, a slower step, you're supposed to shrink, fade, and become invisible. And what happens when we hear that story long enough? We begin to live as if it's true. We fold our hunger neatly away like old clothes we think no longer fit. We silence that inner voice that dares to whisper, "I still want, I still crave, I still miss the feeling of being lit up from the inside." I've sat across from women who told me through tears, "I thought menopause meant the end of intimacy. I thought dryness meant I was done." And I've heard men quietly confess, "I feel broken because erections don't come as easily as they used to. I thought I'd lost the best parts of myself." But here's the truth that almost no one tells you. Desire doesn't retire. Pleasure doesn't have an expiration date. And your body, the same body that has carried you through 6 or 7 decades of life, still remembers joy, still craves touch, still longs to be celebrated. Yes, it may take a different language to unlock it now. Yes, it may whisper where once it shouted. But the fire is still there. And if you've been taught to fear it, bury it, or feel ashamed of it, then claiming it again becomes not just an act of self-care, but an act of quiet rebellion. Because choosing to touch yourself after 60 isn't just about sex. It's about refusing to vanish. It's about saying, my body still matters. My pleasure still matters. I still matter. Part 2. The power of pleasure. Let's talk about what pleasure actually is. Most of us grew up with the idea that pleasure was a guilty indulgence, something to sneak, something private and shameful, something that wasn't meant for us, especially not as we got older. But pleasure is not frivolous. It is not selfish. It is not a luxury. Pleasure is medicine. When you allow yourself to feel, whether through self-touch, masturbation, or simply the act of slowing down and being present in your body, something remarkable happens. Your nervous system exhales. Stress, hormones like cortisol dip. Feel-good chemicals, endorphins, oxytocin, dopamine, rise. Your blood pressure softens, your muscles unclench, even your immune system benefits. And if you're thinking, that sounds too good to be true, consider this. The human body is wired for pleasure. It's part of our biology, our skin, our nerve endings, our erogenous zones. These aren't accidents of design. They're nature's reminder that joy and survival are connected. That pleasure is not just for making babies or for fleeting moments of youth. It's for health, it's for vitality, it's for you. But here's the part that goes even deeper. Pleasure isn't just about what happens in your body. It's about what happens in your sense of self. Because when you choose to touch yourself, when you choose to explore your own desire, you're sending yourself a powerful message. I am still worthy of care. I am still worthy of tenderness. I am still worthy of delight. Think about how much of your life has been given to others. Children, partners, parents, jobs, responsibilities. Decades of putting yourself second, or maybe third or fourth. Masturbation, after 60, is one of the few acts that belongs entirely to you. No performance, no expectation, no giving yourself away. Just receiving from your own hands. And isn't that radical? Isn't that beautiful? I like to think of it like this. Imagine a garden that has been neglected. The soil is still rich, but it hasn't been watered in years. The flowers are still capable of blooming, but they've been waiting for rain. Your body is that garden. Pleasure is the rain. And masturbation is you choosing to pick up the watering can and say, I will tend to myself. I will not wait for someone else to notice I am thirsty. Because here's what almost no one tells you. Pleasure isn't just physical, it's spiritual. It's an awakening. It's you saying, I am still here. I am still alive. I can still feel joy, even in this body that the world may no longer see as desirable. And when you allow that, when you practice that, you're not just nourishing your body, you're reclaiming a piece of your soul. Part 3. The barriers we carry. Now, I know some of you are listening and nodding, maybe even tearing up, but there's also that little voice inside whispering, this all sounds nice, but not for me. I feel silly trying. I don't know if my body even works anymore. What if I've waited too long? What if that part of me is gone? And I want to pause here and really honor that, because these barriers are real. They are not just excuses. They are the weight of decades of conditioning, of cultural silence, of bodies that have changed in ways you didn't always expect or ask for. Let's name a few of them. For many women, menopause came like a curtain drop. The hormones shifted. Vaginal dryness or pain showed up. Suddenly, what once felt natural became uncomfortable, and the easiest solution was to simply close the door. Society didn't offer support or guidance, just the unspoken message. You're done now. Move on. For many men, erections became less predictable, or they took longer. And because our culture links masculinity to performance, many men internalize the message. If I can't do it the way I used to, I must be broken. I must be less of a man. And for so many of us, regardless of gender, there is shame. Shame about our aging skin, shame about our bellies or our wrinkles, our shame about daring to feel sexual at an age where society would rather us knit quietly in the corner, invisible. But here's what I want you to hear. Different does not mean broken. Bodies change, yes. Sensation shifts, yes. But none of this means you've lost your capacity for intimacy or pleasure. It only means the map has changed. Think of it like this. In your 20s, desire was like a spark. You could strike a match and flame would appear instantly. In your 60s or 70s, desire is more like a slow-burning fire. You gather the wood, you prepare the kindling, you strike the match carefully, And then, once it catches, it glows steadily, richly, sometimes even more beautifully than the wild flames of youth. That's what intimacy after 60 can be. Not less, but different. Not broken, but deeper. And when you learn to stop comparing yourself to who you were at 20 or 30, and instead honor the body you have now, the wisdom, the patience, the gentleness, it opens a new dimension of pleasure. Because pleasure is not just about speed, or hardness, or wetness, or climax. Pleasure is about presence, about savoring, about connection with yourself. So when you hear that voice saying, "I'm too old, it's too late, my body doesn't work like it used to," pause, take a breath, and remind yourself, different does not mean broken. Different can mean deeper. Different can mean more intentional, more soulful, more human. Part 4. Storytelling and examples. Let me share some stories with you, because sometimes the hardest part about reclaiming pleasure is believing that it's even possible. A woman I once spoke with, let's call her Eleanor, was in her late 60s. She told me, "I thought my body was done. Sex had become painful, so I avoided it. And honestly, I started to feel like my body wasn't mine anymore. It was just something I carried around. Then one day, I bought a small vibrator. Not because I wanted an orgasm, but because I wanted to see if I could still feel anything at all. At first, I felt awkward, almost foolish. But slowly, I realized I could touch myself without pressure, without judgment. I didn't have to rush. I didn't have to prove anything. And the first time I allowed myself to climax again, after years of silence, I cried. Not because of the orgasm itself, but because I realized I was still alive. In here, my body hadn't abandoned me. I had abandoned it. And then there was a man in his early 70s, Robert. He said, "I spent years thinking I was broken. Erections weren't what they used to be. I stopped trying because every attempt felt like failure. But then I asked myself, what if intimacy wasn't about what I can't do, but about what I can?" I started exploring touch, not just genitals, but chest, thighs, my belly. I tried oil, soft music. Sometimes I'd sit by the window at sunrise, touching myself slowly, breathing deeply. And I realized I didn't need the same performance as when I was 25. What I found was something different, more tender, more sacred, almost meditative. I wasn't broken. I was evolving. These are not rare stories. These are human stories, quiet stories. Stories most people never share because we've been taught to stay silent about sex, especially after a certain age. But when people do open up, the pattern is clear. Pleasure is still possible. Intimacy is still possible. And in many cases, it's better. Because here's the secret. At 20 or 30, you might have had speed, stamina, intensity. But at 60, 70, 80, you have depth. You have patience. You have the ability to savor. Think of it like food. In your 20s, maybe you wolfed down fast food in the car, barely tasting it. But later in life, you sit with a meal. You smell it first. You sip the wine slowly. You notice the flavors. Pleasure at this stage of life can be like that. A slower, richer banquet where every bite counts. And that's what I want you to imagine. Masturbation not as a quick release, not as proof of function, but as a feast you prepare for yourself. A way of saying, I deserve to linger, I deserve to taste, I deserve to feel. When you let yourself step into that perspective, the whole experience shifts. You stop asking, am I broken? And start asking, how can I explore? And exploration, my friend, is what keeps us alive. Part 5. Practical guidance. So how do you begin? How do you step back into pleasure when it's been years, maybe even decades, since you last allowed yourself to fully claim it? The answer is slowly, tenderly, intentionally. This is not about getting it right. It's about curiosity. It's about exploration. It's about showing up for yourself the way you wish a lover had always shown up for you. Here are a few ways to start. Start small. Forget the idea that pleasure has to mean orgasm right away. Forget the idea that you even need to touch your genitals at first. Begin with simply placing your hands on your own skin. Stroke your arms. Cup your face. Run your fingers down your legs. Let your body remember the language of touch, without pressure, without agenda. Think of it as reintroducing yourself to an old friend. Invite comfort. Many people tell me, I don't feel sexy anymore. But here's the truth. Sexiness isn't about looking a certain way. It's about how safe and alive you feel in your own body. Create a ritual for yourself. Light a candle. Put on music that makes you feel warm inside. Wrap yourself in soft blankets. When you make space sacred, your body responds differently. You deserve that care. Use support. Our bodies change with age. Hormones shift. Tissue thins. Erections may soften. Arousal may take longer. These are not failures. They are biology. And biology has tools. Lube is not a weakness. It's a gift. Vibrators and toys are not replacements. They're allies. Think of them as walking sticks on a hiking trail. They don't mean you're incapable. They mean you're wise enough to travel with support. Follow sensation, not expectation. In youth, masturbation often carried urgency, a rush toward climax. But after 60, you have the chance to redefine it. Let pleasure be about sensation, not just orgasm. Explore what feels good. Temperature, rhythm, pressure. Try a warm bath. Oils, silk against skin. Allow yourself to drift, to linger, to wander. If orgasm comes, beautiful. If it doesn't, you've still given yourself the gift of presence. Release comparison. Perhaps the greatest barrier is that voice in your head comparing who you are now to who you were at 25. But you are not supposed to be 25 again. You are supposed to be you now, a wiser, richer, fuller version of you. Imagine trying to fit into the shoes you wore as a child. They don't fit because you've grown. Pleasure works the same way. Don't shrink back into old shoes. Step forward into the ones that carry you now. Think of all this as practice, not performance. There's no grade, no right or wrong, just a gentle coming home to yourself. And maybe the most important piece of guidance I can offer is this. Give yourself permission. Permission to take your time. Permission to explore. Permission to let go of shame. Permission to rediscover not just your body, but your right to joy. Because when you choose to touch yourself with love, you're doing something radical. You're telling the world, I am not invisible. I am not finished. I am still here. I still matter. And I deserve to feel good. Conclusion. So if you take one thing from this conversation, let it be this. You are not too old for desire. You are not too late for pleasure. Your body has not betrayed you. Masturbation after 60 isn't just about sex. It's about reclaiming your aliveness. It's about refusing to hand over your joy to shame or silence. It's about looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, I am still here, I am still whole, and I am worthy of feeling good, right here, right now, in this body. Because your story isn't finished. Your body is not a relic of the past. It is a living vessel of wisdom, resilience, and yes, pleasure. And every time you choose to honor it, every time you choose to touch it with tenderness instead of criticism, you are practicing something revolutionary, self-love without apology. And maybe that's the greatest gift of aging, realizing that we don't need anyone else's permission anymore. We don't need to perform. We don't need to conform. We can finally live for ourselves. So, if you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. You are allowed. You are worthy. You are enough. And if this message spoke to you, if it stirred something in your heart, I invite you to keep walking this path of discovery with me. Subscribe to Echoes of Elderly Wisdom, where we celebrate the beauty, the dignity, and the truth of life after 60. Because your story matters. Your pleasure matters. You matter. Until next time, be gentle with yourself, be curious with yourself, and above all, don't forget, joy is still your birthright. Fade out with warm, uplifting music, screen displays. Subscribe to Echoes of Elderly Wisdom, where every season of life has its own beauty.